our route. We had this idea to use start.
This was the phone call to Mahmood suggesting he go on stage and interrupt the Home Secretary.
Okay. Okay. I think we're live. Can I just lift this a little bit? Hi. Right. Okay, great. I think we're live and I think we're ready to start. I think I've got thumbs up from Tech to say yes we can, yes we do. Lovely. Hi everyone online. Welcome to the evening session of day 2 of QFFF. My name is Zoey Black. I'm very, very excited to be your host apparently this evening. We are screening a very cool film. I've had a brief look at it earlier today and I'm keen to see the rest of it. So just some introductions before we get into the meat of the session. Like I said, my name is Zoey. I work for an organization called Gender Dynamics, and I'm the organization's legal and education advocacy officer. I'm also a content creator in my own space and used to work in the film and television industry and theater industry for a while. And so I'm very, very excited to be a part of a film festival like this and to be hosting this session. Just to get some formalities out of the way very, very quickly. I just want Layla to say hello, who is on our tech support. Layla, say hi to the people.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Layla. Thanks for all your work and stuff in running the session today. I know it's been quite a challenge in migrating this effectively live film festival online. So if we do have technical difficulties, that would be on my end, and just generally, just bear with us, please. To talk about the program very, very quickly, I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves to you in a bit. We are going to be screening a film called My Transgender Life, and that will follow up with a very brief conversation about the film, about access to healthcare, wellness for LGBTQI plus persons, and where we sit with that in the country today, and reflect on that a little bit. And then I'd like to open that up to the floor, to you, to ask questions, if that's questions about the film, if it's questions about anything related to, I guess, health, wellness, particularly around COVID-19 and the pandemic and how that's impacted the community in a number of ways. If those are questions that you want to direct to either of our panelists, I want to leave some time at the end for that as well. Okay, so the two panelists that I have with me here are Lethabo and Kellyn, who's joined us online as well. Lethabo, do you want to introduce yourself to the good people who are watching online?
Hi, good people. My name is Lethabo Hanong. My preferred pronouns is them, their, or theirs. I'm one of the nation called the Great People of South Africa and a part of a group called We See You, and a transitioning human being. Yeah, that's me.
Thank you. Online we have Kellyn joining us. Kellyn, would you like to introduce yourself to everyone?
Hi everyone. It's a pleasure to be here all the way from Johannesburg. Would love to be in Cape Town next time maybe. I work at Iranti, Johannesburg-based LTI, so lesbian, trans, intersex organization. We do media-focused advocacy work as well as other forms of more traditional advocacy, grassroots advocacy. And I am there in the capacity as communication consultant, as well as dabbling in trans advocacy. And I also do a little bit of research for ILGA World, which is the Geneva-based sort of international network of LGBTI organizations. I just realized my framing is very odd. I've cut off my head to anyone who's watching this video. But yes, thank you so much for the invite, and I'm looking forward to this chat.
Lovely, thank you, Kellyn. I do have apologies from 2 other panelists who were supposed to join us this evening. Apologies from Lungile and Yonela, and Yonela is the director of the film that we're about to screen, who's having technical difficulties on their end. So if they do join us midway through the session, I will then hand over to Yonela to introduce themselves to you as well. But I think for now, let's screen the film and then have a chat about it afterward. Okay, Layla, can you do the things?
My name is Yonela Simethu. I am 28 years old. I live in Langa Township, and I'm a gay man. Growing up in the township, people have always been so curious about me and what does it mean to be gay, always asking me questions like, what does it mean to be gay? And I always have to answer those kind of questions myself. Having said that, I've always been so curious about transgender people and how they live their life. So I found a friend of mine who can speak to me about being transgender. Uqaleni uziva kanjena?
Ngondlela emncinci ndisakhula, ndiqala uziva ngondincinci ndisakhula nditshomene namantombazana.
Umama wakho wazithetha kanjani izo ndaba?
Mama zange abe nangxaki because into wayeyithanda leyo kuba ndingazubakho sesitratweni kwinto zee-grants neentonto zokulwa apha phandle. Wayerayithi naloo nto.
Esikolweni wawunxiba kanjani and babekuthetha kanjani?
Ndanxiba i-uniform
Esikolweni?
esikolweni ndanxiba i-uniform i-full uniform, but ke babe khona aba-right for mna, babe khona ke abaphinda ke ukubageze babe nezigezi like bazi abantu abangamakhwenkwe bayathanda ugezi like amantombazana bona babe bengenangxaki na.
Okay. I-society yona ikuthetha njani? Like abantu ohlala nabo engingqini yakho banjani?
Bakhona abantu apha estrate apha ehlaleni bakhona aba-right for mna, bakhona abangekho right, bakhona abayigxekayo, bakhona abayigxeki, bakhona abagezayo, bakhona abangayigezeliyo. Ba-right, abanye akakho right.
Like njani? Ngicacisele uba isigezo singena njani, abantu bakugezela kanjani?
Okay, baqala ngento ba mhlawumbi ndiyaphuma apha ndinxibe ilokhwe, bazoba khona bathethayo imofi ntontontontontonton, babe khona bangcomayo uba usemhle ntontontontonton.
Iitshomi zakho zona?
Zirayithi ishomi zam azinangxaki, ishomi zam azinangxaki, zirayithi, ziyandivuyela.
Ubukhe wamenshini into yoba umama wakho akafuni wenze le surgery, ufuna uqala uye entabeni. Khe sicacisele banzi ngaloo nto.
Umama wam akafuni ndiqale nge-surgery ndingekayi ehlathini. Ufuna ndiqale ndiye ehlathini ndenze isiko nendiligqibe ndekoku ndingaqhubekeka nenze noba yintoni endifuna uyenza.
Wena uyafuna uya ehlathini?
Ewe, ndiyafuna uya ehlathini for uba ndenze isiko lalapha ekhaya ndengoku ndigqibe ndibe right ke ngoku.
Uceba izawutshintsha iingqondo zakho loo nto ehlathini, and then uye ube ngomnye umntu okanye uzawuqhubekeka ube ngulo mntu nguye, and then
Ukuya kwam ehlathini akho nto izawutshintsha. Ndizawuqala into endizazimamela ehlathini, into zaphana ezithethwa phana nezinto ezenziwa phana, and then ndibuye ndinxiba uhlobo fuye ndinxibe ngalo lo muntu ongutata, and then xa kuseyokoku funke ndikhulile nditshintshile ezinto bezinxiba zobudoda ndibuyele kwezi mpahla zam bendizinxiba. Ndilinde utshintsha mani, utshintsha like olu hlobo ndililo andidalelwanga uba mandibe like ndidalelwe uba yinkwenkwe nebhake ngoku mna andiyifuni uba yiyo. Ngase nditshintshe and ndifuna utshintsha kakhulu.
utshintsho olungakanani olufunayo? Like zintoni ozifunayo for uba ube usatisfied ngelo nto kwelife wakho?
Into endizifunayo, okay, mabele ne-private part, ewe, and ke ngoku ndiyeke nokhula intshebe, ewe.
Ikhona into yaziyo nge-surgery le ufuna uyenza?
Ngale surgery ndifuna uyenza akho nto enintsi endiyaziyo ngayo. Akho nto enintsi endiyaziyo.
After conducting research from a friend of mine, I wanted to hear more about transgender people. So I researched a doctor who does the surgery for transgender people. I went to Groote Hospital and met up with Dr. Kevin Adams there.
Plastic surgery is one of the few areas of medicine where your patients actually often want you to do what they ask you to. In most other areas of medicine, people don't actually want to have an operation or have treatment, but they have to. So the reason it appeals to me is that the vast majority of my patients are incredibly happy after whatever we've done. So that's why plastic surgery.
What does it mean to be transgender to you?
A trans man has always been a man and should be addressed as a man. So the fact that he has breasts and a vagina should not make any difference to the way that you address them. Normally we're taught to be polite and address people appropriately. And so for a trans man you should use male pronouns, if that is what they want, because that is who they are. For a trans woman, the same applies. So it's got nothing to do with the body you were born with. It's got to do with who you are and the person that you're interacting with you as the person that you are.
Can you please tell us, Doctor, how long is the process for going through the process of going to the transgender?
So every transgender person wants to have their surgery as soon as possible. There are stumbling blocks along the way. There's preparation for the surgery that needs to be done beforehand, and deciding which surgery is most important for you. And so for the trans men, usually the big issue is having a mastectomy, removing the breasts. For most of the trans women, it's removing the penis and creating a vagina. And that is different for everybody. Our biggest problem is resources and demand for those resources. So we have a very long waiting list for gender affirming surgery at Groote. It's roughly in the region of about 25 years, and that is only for people that live in the Western Cape. The waiting list would be much worse if we open it up to the rest of the country.
Have you ever had a patient that regrets doing the surgery?
And the answer to that is very simple. None. Okay?
When I first started out doing the surgery, I was uninformed and arrogant and various other things. But my patients taught me that they don't care about the scars. What they care about is having a body that fits in with who they are.
My message to the people out there is not to be quick to judge a person, because you don't know what that person is going through. And then it's their life. They're supposed to live it the way they want to.
My name is Kellyn. It means I'm accepted.
Okay. Lots of feels and things. I'm not going to try and talk too much. I really want to hear what our panelists have to say. Can I go to Kellyn online first? Is that fine?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Kellyn, initial thoughts and feelings around the film.
I suppose yes. I have a lot of feelings. I always enjoy, I think, seeing these issues brought to life on screen. Trans representation is something that is very important to me. I did my MA Advits on something similar. Well, not in terms of documentary, but in terms of focus on trans women's bodies in cinema. But I'm always grateful to see a member of the LGBTI community, of the queer community, doing the representing, telling stories of our communities rather than having someone external. And in this case, yes, Yonela identifies as a gay man and is looking into the transgender world, but you still have a lot of those shared lived realities in this country and across the world between sort of gay men, trans women. So I am always grateful to see representation like that. I will say that, and I also experience this in interviewing medical professionals for my work. Yeah, there's a lot I can say about the medical takes that this film brings forward. And it's nothing, I think, against Dr. Adams. He's a great doctor with a great reputation. But of course, when you're making a film about healthcare, you interview medical professionals, they come at it from a certain angle, a certain lens that I don't always necessarily align with. I don't know if you want to come back to that later or if you want me to expand a little bit. I don't want to take all the time when you've got a guest right there next to you. So I'll close it there for now. Those will be my opening comments.
Thanks, Kellyn. Lethabo, thoughts?
Yeah. For me, it was a little bit of deep and also have mixed things up as like Kellyn. But to see like a peer person like me, like the same person in the same age like me going through that and saying that they've been bullied and being called by names. Yes, I'm also being called by name, but also he wants to go first to the first phase of like going on the basis of respecting the culture, which by from my side, I don't firmly don't believe in cultural stuff, but for his side, it opened my eyes like, okay, it's all about respecting my culture and respecting my family and always bring them first. And then at the end, I have to be in the end by myself. So for me, I find it difficult and very sad, but really opened my eyes. Like there are some people that who still out there are failing to stand up for themselves, and some of them are still standing up for themselves like I do. But yeah,
Thank you. So like just to like I think on a common thread there, like I guess in watching the film, there's I guess there's a particular type of quality that comes through. I guess a tenderness when I think when queer stories are told through, I guess, queer people through queer lenses, and so I mean, like Kellyn was also saying that I mean, even though. Yonela identifies as a gay man, that queer lens still then does in fact color the way that the film gets, the story gets told, at least in the narrative. There was something interesting that I did note, and I'm noting everybody's points, and I think we're going to get through some of these because they're quite meaty things. Kellyn, you mentioned something around the medicalization, I guess, of queer bodies in that kind of space. And I thought it was interesting in the film, in the way Yonela had framed, I guess, the conversation around this trans woman, that to some degree there's the notion of surgery or medicalization is somehow synonymous with trans bodies or trans identities. Do you have thoughts and feelings about this?
I have many thoughts and feelings about many things. But yeah, I think that was perhaps my main issue. I think, for example, something that Dr. Adams said, that all trans people, or at least all his patients, want to have the surgery as soon as possible. And I mean, that in and of itself is not true. Perhaps people do want to hold off and wait, learn a little bit more about it. Perhaps they don't want surgery at all for various reasons. I think gender dysphoria, body dysphoria, it comes in a variety of shapes and sizes and styles, and impacts people in different ways. So I think it's important to remember that there is no one size fits all solution. You know, as Dr. Adams says, you know, a trans man, regardless of specific anatomy, is to be addressed as a man, and vice versa for trans women. And then non-binary individuals as well need to be addressed appropriately depending on the pronouns and identities that they have chosen for themselves. So it does touch on this fact that it's not surgery that makes you a woman or a man. But I think it is very much homogenized in that surgery is what trans people want. They want it as soon as possible. And that simply in reality is not the case. I think that kind of idea can lead to, I suppose, some harmful notions about trans people, in that if you haven't had the surgery yet, then you're not valid yet. And that then means the exclusion, especially here in South Africa, of vast swathes of the trans and gender diverse population. The fact that the waiting list is so long, the fact that the cost is so high, the fact that people don't even have basic information about a lot of these surgeries, as was pointed out in the video, all means that to I suppose conflate trans identity with surgery excludes a lot of people in this country who don't have access to those things from being seen for who they are.
I mean, also like picking up on what you're saying now around so you're talking about like the waiting list being so long to receive those kind of surgeries, and then also the cost implications if one wants to necessarily do that privately. And that, I think, broadly speaks to issues in accessing healthcare as queer people in this country. Lethabo, just talk to us a little bit about your experience around access to healthcare, what that's been like for you in your experience, and has, I guess, the lockdown, COVID-19, had any kind of significant impact?
Yeah, from my side, before I moved to this side where I was living, I live in Paris. So the basics for me, or the easiest way for me to access the medication for my process, it was like from Kadisha to Belleville, even though, but it was too risky because along the way I would meet like very dangerous types of people. Like some, they will like even request to have sex with me. Then I was like, no, you said then I'm passing by. I want to do that kind of stuff. So from Kadisha to Belleville, I have to always look behind my back, look over my shoulders. Who's gonna grab me? Who's gonna do me this? But not having those clinics like in our townships, it's very painful and it's very disturbing because I remember when the COVID, the level started, I was one of those like failed to go to the clinic, and then the clinic was somehow closed, and then I couldn't even reach my medication. The only medication that I will just receive, it was for the PrEP medication, but the hormone pills, it was hard because I have to, every time when I go to the clinic, meet up with the doctor, do the checkup and blood test, but I could not go to the clinic any longer because the COVID started, and I have to wait until the levels are, they were reduced so I can go to the clinic. So I had to lapse a little bit. So I found myself being delayed and finding that the government also, who is in charge of our health, somehow they are doing this on purpose to delay us because they normally don't want us to be who we are. And I also, from my own perspective of view, I found that they are the ones who are most homophobic. And so lapsing from the medication and again to start from the beginning, to start from the process of being moody towards people where you told yourself that you've been just learning how to control your moodiness and your hormones, but it ended up failing because the COVID locked us down, and that's what happened to me.
I mean, like we kind of like know, like, I guess, as queer people that there is a profound stigma that is still attached to being queer. I mean, broadly speaking, in South African society, I mean, to a large degree, a lot of our society is still conservative to a particular type of degree. And that also now suddenly extends into sectors like the healthcare sector, where you're trying to access what is effectively a basic service, and then you're met with not only, I guess, like economic barriers of, if for where many of the facilities are placed, I guess, in more urban areas, and the more outward you go, the more rural areas, services are not as efficient in those areas. So not only are you facing that, you're also facing a level of deeply entrenched stigma, discrimination that are being perpetrated by the very people who are supposed to be, assisting you in that process, which is quite extraordinary. Kellyn, I know you've done some work around this in that kind of area, around access to services. And I guess also, training in certain spaces about how do we go about, I guess what are the barriers firstly? I mean, you did highlight some of them, but what are those barriers, particularly in government? How do we get access to that healthcare? How do we get rid of that stigma with those officials in government who are supposed to provide us with these effectively essential services, particularly as also under lockdown?
So
a lot of the service provision work that I've been involved in recently regarding lockdown, regarding COVID-19, has been more around the Department of Home Affairs. They had also largely under lockdown deemed amendment of gender markers and name changes to be non-essential. Now, under the current level of lockdown, that has ended, and we are still ourselves at Iranti, along with Gender Dynamics and a coalition of, I think, 9 other organizations around the country, engaging with Home Affairs to try and streamline the process, to try and expedite those amendments, given the backlog. But I would say the issue, I don't think it's an issue of malice. I don't think the government doesn't want us to be who we are. I think we just do not appear on their radar when they make these decisions. I think they make a decision based on lockdown needs, based on the needs of their staff, based on their resources, and we are not even an afterthought until we make noise about it. So that's not malice on their part per se, but it is, I would say, an unacceptable situation. And I suppose it is us in civil society who are there to make the noise, to try and get change, to try and have these meetings, to try and make government realize that we are actually here in this space. In terms of healthcare provision and doing trainings around that, I have had the pleasure of doing a couple of sessions alongside some of my colleagues at, for example, Sterkfontein Psychiatric Hospital. It is a state-run psychiatric hospital here in Gauteng, and a lot of medical students and interns often pass through there as they go on to graduate. And on 2 occasions, Iranti has gone there, as well as other locations, and screened a set of 4 videos that we created about sort of trans healthcare 101 and gender affirming care 101, just a very basic explainer on what being transgender is, how to sensitively deal with transgender patients, and then masculinizing and feminizing procedures such as hormones and HRT. And one session, we had a really great group of people. They were very sensitive to the cases we were bringing, to the issues we were facing, and it seemed like, you know, going forward, these students, once they've graduated, really would you know, take into account our needs as a community. But the first session we did there, when you're dealing with sort of veteran medical professionals, with nurses and clinical staff who've been doing this for decades, and you come in as an activist saying, no, you're doing this wrong, there's a lot of resistance, there's a lot of pushback, which is why in the videos that we've created, which are not live to the public as yet, but it's why the speakers in those videos are all medical practitioners themselves, so that it can be peers speaking to peers. But I mean, we had some people, there was one psychologist who said that if being trans is not a mental illness, then if a trans patient comes to him with depression, how does he treat the depression? To which our response was, you treat the depression. Being trans has nothing to do with it. Like, if someone's depressed, you treat that. Why does it matter if they're trans? So that's what we're dealing with. So it is important, I think, to as much as possible get allies within those spaces, within those communities, within those worlds, get allies within government. Because when we come as these upstart, noisy outsiders, they don't always want to listen to what we have to say. I think it's building those bridges is really the only way forward. It's slow work, it's painful work, incremental work, but it's currently, I would say, the best way to go, or one of the only ways to go, without losing what allies we have, unfortunately.
I mean, I'm thinking about that that experience that you had about the psychologist not knowing how to treat a trans person's depression. Uh, and so this has been my experience as well, where I guess suddenly when, particularly I guess in the medical space, and in other spaces as well, I think with trans people, at least in my experience, has been that the first thing and only thing that people see about you is your otherness, your transness. And so they struggle to move past that. And so suddenly everything that they see is through that lens, and then they can't engage in the simple thing like, how do you treat the depression? You treat the depression and not the person's identity for that. And I was thinking about that in the context of some of the things that you were saying, Kellyn, around visibility, I guess, to a large degree, around people's contact and understanding that they have about queer identities. And I think things like this festival are becoming more and more critical to the conversation, more and more critical to things like social justice. When we're talking about advocating for certain things, basic things, video, film, these things are doorways, they are gateways for people to access certain types of experiences. And I think films that are being broadcast on platforms like this, not just this, but other kinds of queer-led films, films made by queer people, for other people as well, suddenly become so critical to that conversation, because that's a really key point of access for other people to, one, relate, because I think empathy is a really critical thing in that space. And then to suddenly have a window into what that experience is like, and then for people to, I guess, act on it appropriately in that kind of context. For you, Lethabo, what would you want to see ideally, I guess, in a healthcare space in terms of, visibilizing the needs of queer people in health, wellness?
From my side first, not only for in the clinics that they are only separately made for queer people, but also like public clinics where every human go when they are sick, because most of the queer people, especially gay people, when they go to the clinics, are the ones who are facing more challenges, because I remember, I think 6 years down the line, I was referring myself to a gay man when I was also knowing that I was not gay, but I was a transgender woman. But so when I had pals, I would tell them that I have pals on my, and they will like say, no, it's not. They were like, what happened? Because we know that we can see that you are gay and this and this. So like, no, because sometimes it's been made by bread or sitting on a cement, but they'll even take long to treat me. They'll call each other like, oh, we have another case of a gay man who came saying that they have pals. So I think the government, when they train or hire nurses or every human being that will be around, like every human, especially LGBTQI people, they should treat them like as human and treat them as not about their sexuality. So they should forget about the sexuality and only see a human being when they come there. That's what I would want to see and happen. And we also need to, we must not be like their last priority when we go to these public clinics, but we also need to be their first priorities, because also our health and sicknesses are the first priority of living as human beings, because at the end of the day, those people, they need us for the world to survive.
Thank you. Kellyn, thoughts from your end around what ideally you would like to see in that kind of space?
So I think the main changes, I mean, I agree with everything, actually. Currently, the state does offer limited gender affirming healthcare for trans individuals. And also, I just recognizing that the title of this session is actually sort of LGBTQI broadly. So I do want to touch on the value that exists in the state providing things like sort of HIV treatment and counseling, and sort of the broad range, not just of gender affirming healthcare. That's where my mind takes me. That's where my bias takes me because I am trans. But talking broadly, I think where the state could improve is in, I suppose, efficiency, recognizing that resources are scarce, that the needs of the population of the country are many and extensive. But efficiency in providing these services and sensitivity. I notice someone in the chat, Rhea, has said that healthcare workers should receive sensitivity training. And I think absolutely that is necessary. I think so many queer people, so many trans people are terrified of going to medical spaces, not even for gender affirming care, but just for a general checkup because of potentially being mocked or being misunderstood or being prodded and probed and given invasive questions. So sensitivity training is vital. And then something else that I would like to see in the private sector is the expansion of provision for this kind of care, these kinds of services in medical aid. Currently, I think it's Discovery is the only medical aid plan that does offer gender affirming surgery. And that is one of the top tier, most expensive things anyway. So for those who perhaps could afford medical aid and fall outside of the bracket of those that the state considers the most in need, they are left, the missing middle is a phrase I've heard thrown around. But for these service providers, for a lot of private practice, medical practitioners, plastic surgeons, for medical aid schemes, these are seen as cosmetic. These are seen as non-essential. It's just something you do to your body just for fun. And for many people who do feel they need these surgeries, who do feel they need HRT in order to live happy, healthy, fulfilled lives, it's often a choice between getting these services or death. So I would like to see a reworking of our healthcare system to not consider these as frivolous, as cosmetic interventions, but as life-saving interventions.
Sure. I guess I'm gonna open this up like a little bit more broadly. There was something that I think both of you said in this last little bit. Kellyn, I think you mentioned it in the sensitivity training, and Lethabo, you also mentioned it in the, you know, how people are treating queer people at healthcare facilities. And in thinking back on the film, I had noted that Simethu had there was like a theme that was kind of running in the things that she was saying, not just necessarily around access to healthcare specifically, but around, like, I guess the notion of wellness, and not necessarily wellness in the context of a medical wellness in, you know, in the way that the state provides that kind of service, but I guess like wellness in terms of, in the form of acceptance, in the form of love. And I think for queer people, for many of us, that is a constant struggle from society that we have all the time. We're always fighting to claim a place at the table because nobody wants to make space for us. And that, to a certain degree, can be really exhausting, really draining, really taxing, and that doesn't serve wellness. Your thoughts?
My thoughts again. Yeah. Those are like really. First, being like the awareness of being accepted around the community. For a queer person, it's very draining and it can cause anxiety, depression at the same time. So you always being afraid of what will happen, because normally from the years that you've been passing, like most of queer people have been killed. Some of them, they've been like passing through the phase of being in a collective rape. Even when you go to a store and you want to buy yourself something to wear, it takes time for you to go to the aisle, like in the aisle or in the section that sells female clothing, because to be like, oh, and they will like speak so that you can hear them, and then they make you to feel little of yourself and the community for itself. They'll tell you about the Bible, and which by sometimes from my side I feel how they analyze the Bible, because I think they don't know how to analyze the Bible, so to say that. But also they bring the thing of the culture when some girls said, no, I have to go to the initiation school first, that to the traditional thing. So they bring all the stuff or all the ways to drain you, so they can lock you in the corner to live like the life that you are not supposed to live. Whereby you will live that life they want you to live, you end up taking your own life by yourself because we're having too much pressure and living a fake life. So you rather decide of saying like, I'm not living this world, so let me take up on my own life and live this world so I can let these people free, because I feel like I am in their spaces. So even when we go into workplaces, it's too much to accept a queer person, because all the people that you are working with at the work, they will, every time they will have their own gathering, or I don't know how to call it, the gossip session there about you. And then when you try to suggest anything in the workplace, it will be not valid, and they will not even listen to you, because they will think that you don't have power to say anything or to bring something that is useful, that will make the company or the workplace be conducive and move forward.
I mean, like, I find that concept like so, like at the same time, while I find it like very, very like interesting, it's at the same time like very sometimes debilitating in some kind of way, that there's often like these massive considerations that we take into account just to do simple things, you know, like going to the store to get something. And there's like this hyper awareness of what is happening around you. You're constantly trying to check the room, you know, to make sure that one, like, is the safe space for me to do this. And it isn't always, right? And so, but sometimes you need to do what you need to do. And then suddenly when you cross that threshold, it's really, really scary sometimes. Because you're not always met with, you know, love and acceptance. Sometimes people are really, really vicious, and most of the time they are. Kellyn, thoughts from the other side there in Joburg?
Well, I'll say Joburg, it's not that different from Cape Town, I suppose, in these aspects. I think it's a global issue. But what I will say, and I suppose I speak from to complement all of that, but speaking from my own personal perspective, the not being accepted is painful, and it's a strain on your mental health and your physical health. But there's also a precariousness to acceptance. And I think this is, Zoe, what you were saying about, you know, always feeling the temperature in the room, if it's acceptable to do X, Y, Z, or be X, Y, and Z. So like occasionally I'll go for a wax, body wax, to manage my dysphoria. But you don't want to put someone who you are going to for this service in a position, an awkward position. So, you know, they've got two prices for a woman's wax and a men's wax. So I always go for the men's wax, because that is the anatomy that they're going to be dealing with. So as personally as I dislike it, it's like I don't want to make other people uncomfortable. I don't want to cause a stir. I don't want to cause a fuss. And so you're always walking this tightrope between existing and not wanting every moment of your life to be some kind of a show or a spectacle or a conflict. when I first started coming out to people as trans, I developed like a horrible stomach ulcer just from the stress of it all. And so I think that is also important in that, you know, the mental wellness, the personal wellness, the fear of acceptance or lack of acceptance, they end up having effects on the physical traditional view of healthcare and wellness as well. So yeah, I think even when you sorry, this is going all over the place. I'm trying to have one single I'm a writer.
No, it's fine.
So I'm supposed to be able to craft things and go thematically, but generally in my family, I'm accepted. In my circles, I'm accepted. With my old school friends from before I came out as trans, I'm accepted. My family accepts in a very limited capacity. But then my friends perhaps will be very accepting, but then they'll say something that just makes you realize, okay, so they're actually just being polite. They don't actually see me as who I am. They're just being polite. And when that happens to you once, then you start thinking about that for every social interaction you ever have from that moment forward. And it becomes difficult to ever just exist. And that puts a strain on you. It makes you feel isolated. Even when you are otherwise accepted, you never really feel integrated. And as I said, that ends up negatively impacting your actual physical health in the long run.
Yeah, saying that your cycles like the little bit of accepting. I have this friend of mine, like who is a brother who's a transitioning man now. We like I had a fight with my mother and my brother, so they had to chase me away from home. So like go home and talk with your mother and do this. So like they even forget that our society or the people that were in our cycle that every human being situation is different from who they are. And every family, it's not like quickly to accept these things because I also found out from my family, my mother is being controlled by her uncle. So her uncle is the head of the whole family and is the eldest among all of us. So when my grand I call him my grandfather, who like say that no, that is not our child. It is going to do that. Also chase that child from the house. So end up being chased out from the house, living in friends' places, and going like door to door just to have a roof over my head because they will also tell to people like who are creepy around the location that they think they are not creepy, but they are creepy. And then some of them ones like said, when you are done doing this thing, I'm gonna find you and then I'm gonna be the first one who have sex with you and then I'm gonna force you like, okay, I need to leave the peripherals because the peripherals for me they are too much. So and some of my cycles were like, oh, this is a good thing that you are doing because I have feminist friends, you see, like, and then we're all acting. So when that feminist come aboard to you and you think some of the guys are also like feminists, but as Kellyn said, they were like being polite towards you, and sometimes you can sense that politeness and you can sense the behavior when you are in the room with them because most of the time I'll be left with these male figures in the room and the way they will interact and the way that they will even like change the language and use the language that they've been taught from the initiation schools, and then you feel like, no, somehow even you don't know this language, but you can hear like this thing or this topic is all about you. So I end up leaving the room and making sure that I don't ever go back there because I never felt welcome and I'll never feel welcome before. So our community is very toxic when they accept us and our friends because some of them they act and then they just want to use you of the resources that you have for them after they being like God that they want from you. It's whereby you will see their true colors and then it will burst for you. It will be too late and will not have anywhere to run, and even know when your family is very typical and you can't go back to them because they were like, we also don't want you to be like this, so you are all on your own at the end of the day.
I mean, it's like it gets so complicated, like, you know, like particularly like with friends and family, like the people that we've not known for a while, you know, people that we have, I guess, close relationships with. Suddenly when they suddenly present themselves as being a little bit problematic in some kind of way, and you pick that up, I think it sometimes becomes really, really difficult to, like, you know, navigate that space, because there's this constant, I guess, push and pull between, you know, wanting to be uh, welcomed in that space in the way that you put it, you know. But then at the same time, uh, you pick up on those little microaggressions, and like navigating that can be like really, really tricky, because for many people, when that space gets a little bit too much, they withdraw, or they'll cut people off in that kind of way. But as much as that is done out of a space for their own wellness, it does cost us something. You know, these are people that are close to us, and so the decision is always very, very tricky, I guess, in navigating that space. Okay, where are we? 7:10. Can we open this up to like questions and things? Are you happy to do that?
Yeah,
Kellyn, are you happy for us to open for questions? Yeah, you get a thumbs up. Okay, please, if you have questions for everybody watching, please drop them in the chat. Layla, who is on tech support, I think in the other room, if you can assist with the, if there are any questions coming through, if that's something that you want to read out aloud, or if you want to ask a question live and turn on your mic in your video, you're more than welcome to do that. Yeah. Okay, do we have questions? See, I can't see the chat from my screen because I'm just looking at the video here. Layla, do we have questions at all?
Hi, Zoey. I will send you a few of the questions. There's quite a long one from Christine. I think maybe Christine wants to put a mic on and then post the question.
Okay, sure, that's great.
Christine, as well.
Okay, let's go Christine first. Christine, hi.
Hi, Joey. I've got a question. You see, with Home Affairs, I've got a problem with Home Affairs. I've started my transition in 2009 already. And everything was been done in 2011. I've got a few questions. With Home Affairs, the first thing about Home Affairs, I'm still married to my wife. Although I've transitioned, I'm a transsexual. Still battling to get my marriage certificate right because they got issues. I have to divorce and get remarried on the new marriage act. I'm not. First of all, who's going to pay for it and so forth? Because I'm also a cancer. I've also had stomach cancer. And the fact of the matter is, when I went for cancer treatments at an hospital, my stomach is completely removed. And first of all, they placed me in a male's ward. Although my ID and everything has been changed at Department of Home Affairs. Medical aid has been changed. Everything. Why don't they can see on the application, when you admission stands Mrs. Withendal. Now they put you on a male's ward because you then they change you to the female wards. Then the females complains, no, this is the male laying next to you. Then they transfer you from a male's ward from a female's ward back to the male's ward. Then next moment you lying with your pink pajamas and everything, and then next moment you see a lot of males around you. Then I complained about this. I'm a female, and they moved me to a single ward. It's the hospital, the medical situation is very difficult. Talking about the family. The family didn't accept me at first. My sister, I'm the eldest I've got 3 brothers and a sister. And my sister completely deleted me when I told her I'm going for transitioning. My brothers, he made a joke of it. He says, yeah, here I'm parading in Cape Town with mini skirts and high heels. So the fact of the matter is you still are a subject. For example, going for my hormone treatment, HRS at Bell Clinic, because I'm a Grooteskiet patient, and now I'm going to the Belva Clinic because that's the closest place to get my hormones and everything. Then I had a problem with one of the nursing councils. I told her I'm a female. She first called me, sorry sir, and I had a problem with it. Now they want me to go and give them training about transgenderism because they don't know about it. And the fact of the matter is, I just had about 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock, I had a call from CLC. They want to talk to Christine Wittendal. I said, I'm Christine Wittendal. No, you're not Christine Wittendal. The fact of the matter is that the people doesn't understand what it is about. So what can we do further to assist the people because they don't understand what is all about transgenderism. So that is the fact of the matter. With the COVID, I supposed to have gone for my breast augmentations and everything, but through the COVID, I couldn't go. I had to go to Grooteskiet to see Dr. Kevin Adams again. He says, no, as soon as you've been aligned for surgery, they will look at it first. So my question is, why can the people doesn't accept us for who we are? That's my question, Zoey.
Okay, thank you, Christine. Many questions. Okay, I'm going to try and address one of those questions specifically, and then I'm going to try and give to the panelists to maybe speak to some of the other things. So in respect of your particulars that you have amended with the Department of Home Affairs, and that in relation to the marriage certificate. So as far as I'm aware, there was a case, I'm going to remember the year, I think it might have been 2014, I think it's the KOS judgment, in which a number of applicants had taken the Department of Home Affairs to court. These were all people who were married under the Marriage Act. So now currently in this country, there are multiple bits of legislation that governs how marriages happen in South Africa. And so the one is the Marriage Act, for lack of better legal or politically correct language, that is for straight people. And then there's the Civil Union Act, which in the wording of the act is specifically for same sex or same gender and for opposite sex or opposite gender couples. And then we have customary marriages as well. So as far as the KOS judgment was concerned, the court ruled there that that for people who have had their particulars amended with the Department of Home Affairs who were married, you should be not getting a divorce in order to facilitate that process at all, right? So the Department of Home Affairs can't force you to get a divorce. What should be happening is that this department is supposed to register that marriage in the appropriate, under the appropriate legislation, which should be, I think in your case, what it sounds like would be the civil union, under the Civil Union Act, so a civil union, effectively. Now, I just want to contextualize that by saying that I'm not an attorney, I'm not a legal expert, but this is just off the top of my head in terms of that. So that is something that shouldn't be a thing. I think perhaps it might be a good idea to get in touch with a legal center. I know, I think it's the LRC, Legal Resources Center, was involved with the KOS judgment, and they can potentially give you some more specific advice as to how to go about dealing with DHA in respect of your marriage and them instructing you to get a divorce, because that is not right at all. So I hope that answers that question. I don't know if anybody else has any input on that, or if we have I don't know, an attorney on the call as well who may want to give input on that at all. Somebody wants to speak. Is it Kellyn?
No, Christine.
Oh, it's Christine. Yes.
I'm part of that legal resource center. They're busy with the legal resource center, but since I've altered all my ID documents and everything in 2011 already. That was with Mrs. Broadfoot. So she was still at head of Home Affairs that time already. And I got married in 1988 already. So as you can see, I'm part of that whole process. That High Court judge, what was in Cape Town, I was part of that.
Okay.
So I'm just explaining to you what the circumstance. I'm still battling because I'm married on the Civil Union Act. Now they want me to change the whole process of Marriage Act. And they, for example, they requested at Home Affairs. Now they want the register. Because the register went that time already, it doesn't been kept at the church or the court offices or whatever. It's been sent up to Pretoria. Now they want the register book where I was married. So you haven't got it. Not even the church got it where I got married. So that is the situation with Home Affairs at the moment.
Okay, so I think, Christine, like in your context, that like the legal thing around this is quite specific. So I don't know if like we can like give comment on that necessarily specifically, but I think also like in the way that you're highlighting it, I think this does speak to, I guess, broader issues around government, the lack of movement in that kind of spaces. In this case, it would be the Department of Home Affairs, around access to like basic services for trans and gender diverse persons in that kind of space. There was something that that Christine also brought up, I guess in the notion of family and acceptance. And so what do we do in that kind of way? Thoughts from your end?
For myself to answer, Christine, since I left home and I've been speaking with some few of the families who doesn't have a bit of a problem, but from the movement or the book that I had from down the line from 4 to 5 months ago, I ended up calling them my chosen family. It's whereby you go as a queer person and you meet with these queer people also. When you're all together, you form sort of a family, and then you call yourself a chosen family where you know that you'll be loved and supported, and they'll be when you are on your journey, they'll be by your side. So yeah, for me, I live with most of the time, I rely on my chosen family, and few of those in the family, like I think 3 on the same age group with me who understands me and who gets who I am and speak with them most of the time. And I'm still not feeling like I'm feeling derailed because I'm one of the 1 in to 10 who try to commit suicide before, and then I end up before committing suicide, and then told myself that I have a lot of living for, even though people are there to insult me and then people who are there to reject me. But being rejected by your family and being rejected by other people, it's not the end of the world. Your family can reject you, but when you fully finished and then there will be time when they need you, there will be time when they come and ask forgiveness from you. Then you have to be ready to forgive them and weigh that weight and carry that load on your shoulders when they come in to apologize, because it's going to open the old wounds that you thought you buried them. Those old griefs, they will be like resurface again, and you have to again take a step of bearing them. So yeah, it's better and good for your health to live with the chosen family from my side.
Sorry, I have notes from tech support to say that we have a number of other questions as well. Layla, do we have more questions?
Hi Zoe, we have questions from Zintle. Zintle, you may now ask your question. We've got a few more after that as well.
Okay, sure. Go for it. Zintle, are you there? Maybe you'll unmute your mic, maybe? We can't hear anything on our end.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Hi.
I was saying good evening to everyone. Before I actually ask my question, I actually would love to share a quote with everyone here. It is by George Day, and it goes, quote unquote, inclusion is not bringing people into what already exists. It is making a new space, a better space for everyone. Quote first. So basically my questions are not really directed to anyone specific, but I would love to know, first question is, I would love to know how do you navigate the different spaces? Because as people, we have various identities and we have various roles that we play in society. So how do you navigate the various spaces that you exist in without compromising who you are, firstly? And then my second question is, how does one then navigate or own their space in society? Because I believe that each and everyone should own their space in society and feel comfortable and be fully who they are. So how then do you do that and own your space within society, especially within the societies that we live in? Like, the societies that we live in are not accepting of queer individuals. So how do you go about and be you and be truly you and live and speak your truth without compromising who you are? Thank you.
Cool, thank you for that. 2 questions. Kellyn, I'm going to give this space to you. I don't know if you want to speak to that.
I don't actually know if I have an answer to how you can. No, so my answer is it's perhaps a little bit of a cop out, a little bit cowardly, but I don't know if there is a way in our society, in our current time and place, to fully be yourself and to seek acceptance and not have to compromise at all, ever. We will have to compromise sometimes. As we speak, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking at Christmas, when I meet up with my family, what am I going to wear that doesn't cause drama amongst them, but that doesn't betray me? Like, what's a nice middle ground I can... So compromise, unfortunately, is a part of life as a queer individual. And hopefully through advocacy work, through education, through expanding, our presence and our space and the space we take up, eventually that won't be necessary. But if you don't want to compromise, then you need to be ready to fight and to harden yourself against backlash. So that's maybe not a great answer. It's not an inspirational answer, but it's maybe more of a pragmatic one. I will say I on occasion assist for a trans and gender diverse youth support group, and all these trans teenagers, they're very, my mother misgendered me this one time. She's such a insert horrible word that I can't say here live, or like they're demanding surgery and use my correct pronouns, and I'm like, oh my goodness, the youth are so radical. I could never do that to my family. I'm far too timid for that. So hopefully those who are younger than me will carry it forward and be able to offer a more inspirational answer to you in a few years.
Okay. So from my side, Zinhle, first I want to go with 4 provinces. So the first 3 main toxic provinces that I know and I know it's Eastern Cape, Cape Town, and Durban. So those provinces are very toxic. So for each person to navigate and feel free and hold up their space, they can't, especially Cape Town and Eastern Cape, because in Cape Town you have those masculine guys who are coming from Eastern Cape and they come to Cape Town and then they come and want to rule Cape Town and they'll use the ways of Eastern Cape and that I'll use this it's because so they come with that manhood, which is very toxic and very demanding and very like, how can I say this word? Then after that, go to Johannesburg. Johannesburg is the most welcoming, nice, vibrant space whereby they don't have an issue about your sexuality and then about who you are. And they will mostly support you, but those 3 provinces that I started with, they're very toxic. So, and to be among the socializing spaces for a queer person, it's only been in the organizations that are working with feminism and fighting for the human rights and educating people about human rights. So if you go to those organizations or you go around to whereby we form our own safe spaces as queer people, or our events where we say we only want queer people to be around us, it's whereby we can hold the ground and hold ourselves, because I grew up saying that lift your head up and put your chin high. So, but that never worked for me because there was a bullyism and everything that. So a human being can take a bullying for a certain amount, but when the amount increases, it's whereby you get drained and you get suffocated.
So also on that space, in the notion of compromise and how you choose your spaces and where you choose to be, I think I in some way agree with Kellyn. I don't think that we'd live in a world that would be ever free of compromise. I guess it's the nature of social interaction between people that we have to find a middle ground of coexisting in some kind of way. But I do think in some degrees for queer bodies that is disproportionately so. So I guess one has to always navigate those spaces, thinking about, I guess, bearing in mind what level of compromise are you willing to accept, and in which spaces are you willing to go to that compromise? There is a comment that I have been asked to read. I'm a non-binary person in a female-coded body, but I have been super hesitant to enter and participate in trans spaces because of imposter syndrome. Any tips on how to deal with this And is anyone else going through a similar thing? Is anyone else going through a similar thing, Kellyn?
Well, I can't speak, I suppose, fully or properly to the non-binary experience. But I mean, so imposter syndrome is, I think, very common among all gender diverse people. Going back to what I said about sort of the youth support group, on several occasions, some of these teens they've come to me very distressed. They misgendered themselves when they spoke about themselves, and they're like, "What does that mean about me? Am I?" And it's like it takes time for you to also grow into who you are, and to find your space and your identity, and to just get used to it after decades or years of calling yourself one thing as a survival mechanism. It takes time to unlearn that. And that happens with me as well. I happen to be attracted predominantly to women. And being a trans woman, I would suppose that my label then would be lesbian. But that feels so unearned because you're trans. It's like, how can you be a lesbian if you're a trans woman? So when people ask, what's my sexuality? I always say, I'm attracted to women. And they're like, so you're a lesbian? Well, I suppose I just don't want to use that word because people are going to call me out on it. So I think everyone has those moments of imposter syndrome. And this is the closest I can touch on to the non-binary experience is I'm a little bit butch as well. I mean, I like changing tires and I like going on hikes and playing with cool gadgets, and like I don't do very femme things. So I'm like, does that mean I'm not actually a trans woman? Does that mean I'm non-binary? Does that mean I'm a cis man? And I think it's very natural to have all of these thoughts. It doesn't help, I think, that we face this pressure from other people, from society, to conform to certain expectations. If you're trans woman, you have to be femme. Non-binary doesn't exist. You have to have certain. Those expectations they get pushed on us make it so much harder for us to just find ourselves. And so the moment we don't fit perfectly into the labels that get forced onto us, we suddenly maybe think that we're faking it or that we're not really who we are. So the key is to be gentle with yourself.
Yo, that's like a liquor note to leave that question on. Like, Patsy apparently has a hand up. Yeah, Patsy, hi.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, how are you doing?
Good, how are you, Patsy?
I'm so afraid to put on the video. I just come from work and I'm so tired. You say hi. Hello everyone.
Hi.
Okay, there was was it Zintle that asked a question about how to claim space?
So amazing. You know this. So it's a win-win all around.
Who's saying it's so amazing?
That's fine. I'm just gonna affirm him.
I don't know what's happening.
Okay. Zintle, it is the same thing that I was struggling with actually, and it's such a complex and very important question that we should actually deal with because it defines our understanding of ourselves and how we live in the world and the kind of assertiveness that we have. And you know, for me, when I started as a child, you know, there wasn't about taking space and so forth. It was just about playing, and I knew that I was different as I grew up. When I started working, it was an awful time because I was working for government from the beginning, and it was a struggle because people came in and they were told that it's Mr. Ali, right? And they found me sitting there. And they're like, no, we're not looking for you. We're looking for Mr. Ali. And then at the time, I still identified as I'm in my bed. Excuse me, I'm very tired. I still identified as a gay man, right? And you know, it was such a piece of work for me every day to get up, get dressed, go to work, into a space where I'm not being acknowledged, into a space where each and every single day, with each new person that comes through the door, with each engagement, with each telephone call, with each action that I had to perform, I had to prove myself. I had to win people over to make them understand that someone like me is earning the space that I'm in. I got this job because of what I have and what I can do. I needed to prove every single day, and it was so exhausting for me to have to do this every day, especially in the government space, you know, and I broke down, and I had it mentally. I was not okay. I was an alcoholic for some time. I even turned to drugs and so forth. So it was, you know, it was for me the proving every day, and that you're talking about claiming your space, but for me it was more proving your space and so forth. And I was not really centered within myself. And whether it is at your workplace, whether it is within your family unit, whether it is within your church, whether it is with your friends, whether it is with your other activist friends, or in whichever space you are, for me it is about your self-realization. For me, it only happened in 2015, for example, when I went to rehab, um, because at the time I was an alcoholic for a long period. At the time, I was also addicted to tuck. I went into rehab in 2015, and it was such a watershed experience and momentous. It was a process, and it was there when I came within an understanding of who it is that I really am. And it was traumatic, and it was a struggle and so forth. But I believe that one's capacity or capability or ease with which you can claim space anywhere, whether it is in your workplace, whether it is in your home with your family, it must be preceded by a sometimes traumatic look at the inside and a realization of the self, and a learning who is the self, but also an acceptance of who the self is. Because once you reach that, it will translate in a kind of comfort that you have with yourself, and how you live your inside to the world out there, not just your gender expression, but also how you relate to the world, how you relate to ideas, how you relate to situations and stuff like that. So for me, the advice that I could give, I wasn't asked for advice, sorry, but I'm giving. But the advice from my experience is that it is that self-reflection and that self-understanding, but also a dogged commitment to not give up. Because even now, and even still, some mornings I need to do constructive self-talk in the mirror, where I have to say, listen, just, you know, I know it's difficult, it's hard, you just need to do this thing. You just need to get up, put the eyebrows on, and go to work. You know, so it takes it's commitment, it's work, it's effort, it's tension, it's anxiety, it's stress, but it's putting yourself out there. And the more you put yourself out there, the more you become comfortable with who you are, and the more it is not a fight, but the more it is an appearance and being present in yourself and in the situation. And that is claiming space. But it must be preceded by a self-knowledge and a self-understanding. And what also helped for me was my relationship to my parents, whom I'm eternally grateful for, that they um, the love, I don't want to use the word acceptance and so forth, but also actively seek out spaces, queer spaces, where you can almost experiment with your who you are, and find the comfort of expression within a group of people that are like you. And once you feel and understand that there's actually a lot of people like you, and that you are actually okay, and that you are funky and good and cool, you may slowly extend that to the world out there. Jy weet, voetjie vir voetjie, bietjie vir bietjie. You learn how to extend your persona beyond the queer circle. So it is baie goed. It's a lot of things, but really, honestly, truly, it must be preceded by an internal self-understanding and self-acceptance. And the transcendental part must be a self-love thing. You will be able to claim space any and everywhere that you go, even in spaces, Zoey, where you face hate and rejection and discrimination and. Then you can sit in those spaces, claim it, and be present as you and as you are. That's just from me. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, my mic was muted. I don't know what happened. Yeah. Patsy, thank you. Away. So that's also like a thought that's always like been, I think that is something that's also I've been, I guess, to a large degree playing with, thinking about for a while now, is around where I place my value in terms of how other people perceive me, and how other people, I guess, engage with me. And I think for me personally, once I started to make the move from placing less and less value in the hands of other people, and rather that my sense of ownership in taking up space in a particular kind of area is where that is coming from a space of like genuine self-love and self-acceptance, it suddenly matters less whether or not other people accept me in that space or not. And so you're then able to occupy spaces no matter necessarily where you are or how vicious the hate is, I guess, in that kind of space. So thank you for also like reminding me about that, because I'm also that person that needs, you know, to pep talk myself in the mirror some days, because, you know, we need that. Yeah. I want to check if we have, Leila, do we have any other questions coming through?
I'm not sure if Andy still wants to pose a question. Andy had a question. He's a medical practitioner.
And did you say Andy?
Andy.
Okay. If there's a person that wants to go for it, please do. We've still got a little bit of time. Yeah. It's quiet on our end, can't hear anything. Is it, Leila, was it somebody that was posting something in the chat, or do they want to speak?
I think Ria's going to go.
Okay, cool, yes.
Good evening, everybody. I never know what time it is. I'm one of those people that lock myself in a room, and I never know whether it's day or night, so I had to check real quick that it was in fact evening. So I'm basically going to speak a little bit to what somebody in the chat spoke about, essentially like the question that was just asked about non-binary. My pronouns are she, her, they, them, and z. And I identify as gender fluid. And it took me a very long time to come to the space where I could actually come out and tell people that I was gender fluid or I was non-binary. A lot of people asked me if I was lesbian, and I would go like, no, I wasn't. Even though I am very attracted to women. I think women are beautiful, very desirable. But in my space, I knew that being called lesbian didn't exactly fit. And I knew that what was different about me wasn't necessarily a sexual identity aspect as much as it was a gender identity aspect. And a lot of people don't understand that being non-binary is, it's outside of the binary of male or female, but that also means that it's within the binary of male and female. So it can be outside whether you don't identify with either binaries, or it can be something that fits within that spectrum. So if it's a spectrum from blue to pink, then you could be purple, or you could be orange, or you could be gray, or you could fit wherever it is where that emotionally and psychologically and mentally you feel that you fit. So you can be a woman and be non-binary. I have a friend who transitioned fully as a female, but she identifies as a non-binary woman. So being able to understand that personal growth within, like Patsy said, being able to understand where you fit in for yourself is literally the most crucial aspect of being able to figure out where you fit in within the trans space. Not all non-binary people identify as trans, but I think some of the most beautiful stories come from non-binary individuals that do understand that they also do fit in the trans space, and that you can have top surgery without having to do anything else and present more masculine, but still call yourself a woman. And being able to play with those binaries of gender are extremely important, because that's when they'll start sort of like penetrating through society's status quo and what society expects. And I think it is literally a gateway for people to understanding that fluidity is something that exists, and there is a spectrum of things that we can explore outside of what we were taught. Yeah, that's it. That's my story.
Away, thank you for sharing that. Do we have any other questions? More questions? We've got like 5-ish minutes, I think. Later, do we have anybody on the chat that had a question, comments that you want me to read out? I don't know.
No, there's just quite a few thank yous to Patsy and a few comments from Christine, which we can address if we have time.
Okay, can you read the comments out? I mean, we've got like 5 minutes.
It's not really questions, it's just comments around Christine's transition and that they have lost their job due to transitioning. I don't know if anyone wants to comment on the legalities around that.
Oof. I mean, that's a lot. Like, wow. So just like, I guess, like, you know, in a broad kind of sense, that's wrong on so many levels. Yeah, like guarantee you that's not legal in any kind of space. As far as I know, nobody here on this call is a legal practitioner. So I think it's potentially problematic to give legal advice in that kind of instance. But I guess if somebody wants to, one of the panelists maybe want to speak to, I guess, again, that deeply profound stigma that we face on a daily basis, where people are like losing like their jobs, or just being a human being. Just that, and it's extraordinary. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have feelings. Yeah, go.
Oh, sorry guys, it's touching to lose job because of who you are. In one of the organizations that we have just formed, we have a paralegal advisors. So whereby they advise you how to go through your issue of how you've been treated at work or some places. But also we've been finding out that many like people losing their jobs and ending up on working on call centers and organizations, which by a person wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer, like certain stuff that wanted to be in your life because you love that career, but due to our working spaces and the way that they treat us, they find like loopholes or create loopholes for you. Just they can erase you from that space, so you end up feeling like anything else, like you're not a human being. And else, so we said that it's so wrong in many ways because they were first judgmental about your sexuality. Secondly, like those people, from my point of view, I think they signed like it's a Bill of Rights, whereby they say that they accommodate every human right at their working space. But when it comes to you, they didn't do that. They just like folded their section there. And went on their own ways and just wanted to erase you so that they can feel what they want to feel in that working place. And for me, it's very sad, it's very emotionally, and it's heartbreaking. I don't want to lie, and it will always be when I just bump to those situations in my life.
Sure. Okay, Christine, we are running out of time, so like thank you for that comment on that. I would really recommend that if that's something that you want to pursue in any kind of way, that I mean, you did say that you had been engaging with the Legal Resources Centre on other issues, so this is also something perhaps that they could look at for you if you are wanting to pursue action in that kind of way. We are almost out of time. I do want to give Kellyn some time for just like a quick closing word, if you smart Kellyn on your end.
Mark. I want to say, I think, thank you everyone for this conversation. I've really enjoyed it. I suppose enjoy is not the best word, given some of the really heavy and difficult things that we've heard about that a lot of people are facing. And I mean, from my end, sometimes it is difficult as an activist to hear about these issues and not be able to immediately fix it, to only be able to tell people, we're in touch with legal people here, we're making incremental progress there. That's not good enough, but it's all we've got at the moment. So I do hope everything, going on with Christine, going on with everyone else gets resolved, that we don't have to keep dealing with this stuff for that much longer. But I want to just close and make a final thanks, I suppose, to Yamkela, who's not here, for this film that started all of this off. I know we've kind of diverged away from discussing the film, and I suppose it's only fair to not really talk about the film when the creator is not here to speak to it. But I mean, I say again, anytime that there's queer representation by queer people, it really is a very important thing to see, to experience. We need to be able to tell our own stories. At Iranti, that is one of the core, I suppose, values in the founding of the organization. And so I do want to just extend thanks to the director in absentia for creating this piece and for letting us watch it here.
Thanks, Kellyn. Closing words from you.
Closing words. First of all, I would like to thank everyone that who came to join us live on Zoom, and I can even see they are live on Facebook. Yeah. So yeah, what I would like to say most as a queer person, even though you are having difficulties and you don't have anyone to support you, sometimes when we feel injured and we feel that pressure, just take a notebook or just buy yourself a book and write everything down, write your emotions, write how you feel that day and everything. That can heal you also. But one thing I want to say the most, if you don't have anyone to back you up and to support you and that discriminate you and fighting you, just keep up and push forward wherever you go, because one of my most inspiring ladies always said, push with your chest to go forward until you get what you want in life.
Oh wait, I'm gonna leave it on that note. Yeah, thank you so much for coming through for this really cool conversation. Thank you, Kellyn, for doing the thanks to Yonela, who is not here on the call. Unfortunately, it's so great to have them with us today, given that it was their film. I know we've also tangented a little bit here, but I think these conversations are important, and really thank you to the two panelists, conversationalists who held the space with me here. This amazing conversation. Thank you to you who joined us from home, from your bed, from work. I don't know where you were, but thank you for being here with us. Tomorrow, QFF starts again at 10 a.m. So go and register for that session, get your Zoom link, watch it live on Facebook, do all the things. Thank you so much for joining us. I have been Zoey Black, and have a good evening.